There are certain things in life that are so absurd, so unbelievably tone-deaf, that all you can do is stare at them in stunned silence. That wedding invitation was one of those things. I sat at my kitchen table holding the thick cream-colored envelope while Murphy rested his head on my knee. For several minutes, I couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't even fully process what I was looking at. It wasn't just an invitation. It was a declaration, a celebration, a monument built on the ruins of my marriage, and somehow somebody had decided I should be included. I slowly opened the folded letter from my parents. Big mistake. The letter was written in my mother's unmistakable handwriting. Even after years of no contact, I recognized it immediately. The first sentence made me roll my eyes. Family is stronger than any disagreement. Disagreement. I nearly laughed. A disagreement was arguing over politics at Thanksgiving. A disagreement was debating where to go on vacation. My husband sleeping with my sister wasn't a disagreement. It was betrayal. The letter continued. Page after page of nonsense. My mother talked about forgiveness, healing, moving forward, second chances, how everyone had suffered, how everyone deserved happiness. The more I read, the angrier I became. Not once did she acknowledge what had actually happened. Not once did she admit how badly they had treated me. Instead, the entire letter focused on one thing. Me. Specifically, what I needed to do. I needed to forgive. I needed to heal. I needed to move on. I needed to attend the wedding. And then came the line that nearly made me throw the letter across the room. Vanessa would love for you to stand beside her as a bridesmaid, just as she stood beside you on your special day. I stared at the sentence. Read it again. Then a third time, because surely I was misunderstanding. Surely nobody could be that delusional. But there it was, written in black ink. My sister wanted me to be a bridesmaid. At the wedding where she married my ex-husband, I laughed so hard I scared Murphy. The sound echoed through the apartment. Half laughter, half disbelief. 100% insanity. When Lucas came over that evening, he found me sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by invitation pieces. What's going on? I slid the invitation across the table. He picked it up, read it, then blinked. Read it again. Finally, he looked at me. They invited you? Oh, it gets better. I handed him my mother's letter. Lucas read silently. His eyebrows climbed higher with every paragraph. When he finished, he slowly placed the paper down. Your family is insane. I pointed at him. Thank you. Seriously. I know, like clinically. I know. We sat there staring at each other, then both burst out laughing. Because honestly, what else could we do? Sometimes ridiculousness becomes comedy. I never responded. Not to the invitation, not to the letter, not to the wedding. Nothing. Silence. Complete silence. The only action I took was figuring out how they'd gotten my address. That investigation led to an unpleasant discovery. One of my cousins had shared it. Apparently under pressure from my mother, that cousin was immediately added to the no-contact list. No arguments, no explanations, no second chances. I was done handing out opportunities to hurt me. Months passed, then years. Life kept moving. The wedding came and went. I never saw photos, never asked questions, never cared. As far as I was concerned, Ethan and Vanessa had vanished. And honestly, that suited me just fine. Lucas and I got married. Murphy got older. The restaurant expanded. Life improved. Year after year. The scars never completely disappeared, but they stopped hurting. Eventually, the memories became distant, like old injuries that only ache when it rains. I thought the story was over. I was wrong. 4 years later, on a Tuesday afternoon, somebody knocked on my apartment door. I wasn't expecting anyone. Lucas was working. Most of my friends texted first. The knock came again. 3 sharp taps. Something about it felt strange. I looked through the peephole, then froze. For a moment, I genuinely thought my mind was playing tricks on me. Standing in the hallway was Ethan, my ex-husband, the man I hadn't seen in 4 years, the man who had detonated my life, the man who was supposed to be happily married to my sister. He looked older. Not dramatically, just enough. A little gray near the temples, more lines around his eyes, but it was definitely him. I opened the door halfway. What are you doing here? His expression shifted immediately. Relief, as if he'd been worried I wouldn't answer. What do you want? Can we talk? No. I started closing the door. Please. The desperation in his voice stopped me, not because I felt sympathy, because I was curious, very curious. What could you possibly have to say? He swallowed. then delivered the sentence I never expected to hear. Vanessa and I are getting divorced. I blinked. Once, twice, 3 times. The words refused to register. What? We're divorcing. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then something happened, something I hadn't anticipated. I started laughing. Not politely, not quietly, full body laughter, the kind that makes it hard to breathe. Ethan looked wounded. I didn't care, not even a little. When I finally stopped laughing, he looked offended. Is that funny? Yes? His jaw tightened. Claire? Very funny. I wiped tears from my eyes. Actually, it's hilarious. His face darkened. I almost laughed again. The man who cheated on me with my sister somehow expected compassion? After 4 years? Absolutely not. What happened? I asked. He looked surprised. You want to know? Oh, definitely. For the first time since arriving, Ethan smiled. A hopeful smile. The smile of a man who thinks he has an opening, a chance, a possibility. I recognized it immediately, and I hated it. He wasn't here for closure. He wasn't here to apologize. Not really. He was here because his life had fallen apart, and suddenly he remembered I existed. I'd rather talk in person. We are talking in person. I mean somewhere private. No. Claire? No. The answer came instantly. Firm. Final. Whatever fantasy he'd built in his head about reconnecting, I had no intention of participating. Finally, he sighed. Can we at least get coffee? No. Dinner? No. A conversation? We're having one. His shoulders slumped. For the first time, he looked defeated. Good. He should. Eventually, I folded my arms. Tell me why you're here. He hesitated, then spoke quietly. I made the biggest mistake of my life. There it was, the line. The predictable line. The one every regretful cheater eventually delivers. I stared at him, unimpressed. You mean marrying Vanessa? His eyes widened. The silence was answer enough. I almost applauded. Instead, I smiled, a cold smile, the kind he'd earned. You know what the funniest part is? What? I warned nobody. He frowned. I never interfered. I stepped forward. I let you have exactly what you wanted. The words landed hard. His face visibly fell. Good. Again, good. Then he said something that genuinely shocked me. She was cheating. I blinked. There it was. The missing piece. The inevitable ending. The ending everyone except Ethan had seen coming. I leaned against the doorway, suddenly fascinated. Really? He nodded. Multiple times. I laughed. Again, I couldn't help it. The universe had apparently developed a sense of humor. You're serious. Very. I covered my mouth. Not because I felt sympathy, because I was trying not to laugh directly in his face. He looked miserable. I felt absolutely nothing. No anger. No satisfaction. No pity. Just curiosity. Like watching a documentary about someone else's disaster. Eventually, he said the thing that truly revealed why he'd come. I don't expect you to take me back. I stared at him, then slowly repeated, You don't expect me to what? His face reddened. Too late, the words were already out. The implication was clear. At some point, somehow, this idiot had convinced himself reconciliation might be possible. That maybe enough time had passed. That maybe I still cared. That maybe there was a path back. I almost admired the confidence. Almost. Instead, I burst out laughing again. Harder than before. And for the first time, Ethan realized exactly how impossible his mission was. The look on his face was priceless. But things were about to get even better. Because the next night, Ethan would make one final attempt to win sympathy. And he'd accidentally reveal just how badly karma had punished both him and Vanessa. After nearly 10 minutes of rejection, awkward silence, and watching every fantasy he'd brought with him crumble in real time, Ethan finally left. I closed the door behind him, locked it, then checked the peephole. He was still standing there, staring at the door, as if waiting for me to suddenly change my mind, as if I might fling it open and say, Wait, I've made a terrible mistake. Let's run away together. Instead, I walked into the kitchen and made myself a sandwich. When I checked again 5 minutes later, he was gone. Good. Or so I thought. That evening, Lucas came over after work. The second he walked through the door, he knew something had happened. What's wrong? I pointed toward the couch. You'll never guess who showed up. His expression changed immediately. Ethan. I blinked. How did you know? Because nobody else would make you look that annoyed. Fair point. I told him everything. Every word. Every ridiculous attempt at reconnecting. Every pathetic apology, every mention of Vanessa. Lucas listened quietly, then shook his head. I don't like that he found you. Neither did I. That was the part bothering me most. Not the conversation. Not even Ethan himself. The fact that he'd located me. Again, the first time had been the wedding invitation. Now this. It meant somebody had given him information. Somebody had helped, and I wasn't thrilled about it. That night, I barely slept. Not because I was upset, because I was irritated. There was a difference. I had spent years rebuilding my life. Years. Therapy, growth, healing, the hard work of putting myself back together. And now Ethan had shown up acting like he was entitled to some grand emotional conversation, as if his divorce somehow reopened access to me. The arrogance was astounding. Still, something nagged at me. One question. What exactly had happened? Not because I cared, because I was curious. And curiosity can be dangerous. The next evening, I stopped by Lucas's restaurant. I practically lived there. The place felt like home. Staff greeted me by name. Regular customers waved. The smell of grilled food and fresh bread instantly relaxed me. Lucas was managing the dinner shift. Business was slow. A rainy Tuesday. Only a handful of tables occupied. I settled into my usual booth with a cup of coffee and my laptop. For about 20 minutes, everything was normal. Then the front door opened, and in walked Ethan. I nearly choked. What the hell? The hostess looked confused. Ethan ignored everyone and walked straight toward my table. Lucas spotted him immediately. His expression darkened. The entire restaurant seemed to notice at once. Several employees stopped what they were doing, watching, waiting, assessing. Like a pack of wolves evaluating an intruder. Honestly, it was kind of sweet. Ethan sat down across from me before I could stop him. Lucas arrived 3 seconds later. What are you doing here? The question wasn't friendly. Ethan stood halfway and offered his hand. Lucas, right? Lucas stared at the hand, didn't shake it, didn't even acknowledge it. The silence became painful. Eventually, Ethan lowered his arm. Lucas looked at me. You want him removed? I considered it. Part of me wanted to say yes immediately. Another part was curious, morbidly curious. The same way people slow down to look at car accidents. Finally, I sighed. Not yet. Lucas raised an eyebrow. You sure? Yeah, he looked unconvinced, but nodded. Then pointed directly at Ethan. One chance. Ethan swallowed. Lucas walked away. Not far. Just far enough to give us privacy. Close enough to intervene instantly. The bartender and 2 servers also remained suspiciously nearby. I couldn't help smiling. Protective people were still something I wasn't used to. Ethan noticed it too. They really don't like me. I laughed. You cheated on their friend with her sister. Fair. Very fair. An uncomfortable silence followed. Finally, I leaned forward. Okay. What? Tell me. His eyes brightened. Mistake. A huge mistake. Because he interpreted my curiosity as interest. They aren't the same thing. What do you want to know? Everything. His shoulders relaxed, as though we'd suddenly become friends, as though we were sharing drinks and catching up. Idiot. It started exactly how I expected. Poor Ethan. Poor misunderstood Ethan. Poor victimized Ethan. I had to fight the urge to roll my eyes every few minutes. According to him, the first year with Vanessa had been amazing. Of course it had. Affairs thrive on fantasy. Reality comes later. Then cracks appeared. Arguments, secrets, disappearing acts, odd behavior, late nights, locked phones. Suddenly I found myself recognizing the story, because it sounded familiar. Very familiar. In fact, it sounded exactly like the story he'd given me years earlier. The irony was almost too much. Then came the important part. I discovered the first affair about 2 years into the marriage. I blinked. First affair? His face tightened. Yeah. The singular word had become plural. Interesting. How many? He looked embarrassed. At least 2. I laughed. Couldn't help it. Again. Ethan looked hurt. Again. I didn't care. Again. 2? He nodded. Both married. That made me laugh even harder. The bartender started grinning from across the room. Apparently I wasn't the only one enjoying this. To his credit, Ethan looked genuinely miserable. Maybe that should have made me feel something. It didn't. Not after what he'd done. Not after how he'd done it. Certainly not after 4 years. You stayed? I asked. His expression became defensive. I was trying to save the marriage. No, he wasn't. I knew it. He knew it. Everybody knew it. He was trying to avoid losing money. And sure enough, 30 seconds later, he admitted exactly that. I spent almost a year restructuring assets. There it was. The truth. I nearly applauded. So you were planning your escape. I was protecting myself from the woman you cheated on me with. His face reddened. Yeah. The silence that followed was beautiful. Then came my favorite part. The part I'd secretly been waiting for. What happened to Vanessa? Ethan hesitated. I leaned forward. This was the good stuff, the payoff, the ending. Finally, he sighed. She moved back in with your parents. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard. Then realization hit, and suddenly I was grinning. Actually grinning. Seriously? He nodded. Seriously? She's living at home? Yes. I sat back in my chair, completely satisfied. Not because she was struggling, because it felt poetic. The golden child, the favorite daughter, the woman who spent her entire life believing consequences were for other people, back in her childhood bedroom, living under her parents' roof. Again. The image was magnificent. Thank you. Ethan looked confused. For what? For telling me. His face brightened slightly. The idiot thought he was making progress. Then I delivered the truth. I really wanted to know whether karma eventually found her. His smile disappeared. It wasn't like that. Oh, I think it was. Claire? No. I held up a hand. I got exactly what I wanted from this conversation. His shoulders slumped, and for the first time he realized what role he played here. Not a former husband. Not a potential reconciliation. Not even a friend. An information source. Nothing more. I stood. Conversation over. Across the restaurant, Lucas immediately straightened. Ethan looked panicked. Wait. No. Please. No. I need closure. He was a year. I stared at him. The audacity nearly impressed me. Closure. After all these years. After everything. Closure. I leaned down, close enough that only he could hear. You don't get closure. His face fell. You made choices. Claire, you chose my sister. Silence. You chose lies. More silence. You chose betrayal. His eyes dropped. And then I said the one thing I'd wanted him to understand from the moment he appeared. You don't get to destroy someone's life and then ask them to help you feel better about it. The words hit hard. Good. They were supposed to. I straightened. Lucas was already approaching. Several staff members were watching openly now. Nobody cared about pretending. The atmosphere had shifted. Everyone knew this conversation was finished. Lucas stopped beside me. You okay? I smiled. Perfect. Then I pointed toward the exit. He's leaving. Lucas looked at Ethan. If she says you're leaving, you're leaving. Ethan stood slowly, defeated, embarrassed, finally understanding, at least a little. He looked at me one last time, as if searching for something. Compassion, regret, a crack in the wall. He found none, because there wasn't one. Not anymore. As he reached the door, Lucas called after him. If you ever come back. Ethan raised a hand without turning around. Yeah, I know. The door closed behind him. The restaurant erupted. Not dramatically, just enough. The bartender clapped once. One of the servers cheered quietly. Someone yelled, "Good riddance." I burst out laughing. For the first time in years, Ethan had brought me joy. Unintentionally, but still. Later that night, after the restaurant closed, Lucas wrapped an arm around my shoulders. You think that's the last time? I considered the question. Honestly, no. Something about Ethan's visit felt unfinished. Not because of him. Because people like my mother never let go. People like Vanessa never stop wanting things. And for the first time since moving to Minnesota, a strange feeling settled over me. The feeling that the past wasn't done knocking on my door. I didn't know how right I was, because within a few years, my parents and sister would reach out again. Not for forgiveness, not for reconciliation, not because they loved me. They wanted something. Something only I could give them. And when I discovered what it was, even I was shocked. Life has a funny way of moving forward when you stop staring backward. After Ethan's failed attempt at finding closure, things settled down again. For a while. Years passed. Good years. The kind of years I once thought were impossible. Lucas and I got married. The restaurant expanded, then expanded again. What started as a single neighborhood restaurant eventually became 2 thriving locations. Lucas and his brother worked non-stop. I eventually joined the business part-time, helping with scheduling, payroll, and office management. It wasn't glamorous, but I loved it. For the first time in my life, work felt like family, because it actually was. Then came the biggest surprise of all, motherhood. A year after Ethan showed up at the restaurant, I gave birth to our son. The entire family practically lost their minds. Lucas cried, his mother cried, his grandmother cried, even Nate cried, though he'd deny it forever. The moment they placed my son in my arms, everything changed. Every priority, every fear, every dream, everything. For years, I'd thought my life had been destroyed. Now I understood something important. Sometimes life clears space for something better. If Ethan hadn't betrayed me, if Vanessa hadn't helped ruin my marriage, if my parents hadn't chosen sides, I never would have met Lucas. Never would have moved. Never would have built this life. Never would have become a mother. The realization was strangely freeing. 2 years later, our second son arrived. A loud, stubborn little tornado who immediately became the center of everyone's universe, especially his grandmother's. Lucas's mother practically lived at our house for the first month. Not because we needed help, because she couldn't stay away. She adored those boys. All 3 grandparents did. Lucas's parents and grandmother became everything I'd wished my own family had been. Present, loving, supportive, no favoritism, no manipulation, no conditions, just love. Simple as that. Then my phone buzzed one Tuesday afternoon, and the peace ended. Again. The message came through social media, a platform I'd reluctantly rejoined after years away. Normally, I ignored random notifications. This one caught my attention. The sender's name froze me in place. Diane Morgan, my mother. I hadn't heard from her in years. Not directly, not successfully. Occasionally, she'd create a new account after being blocked. I'd delete the request and move on. This time, curiosity got the better of me. I opened the message, immediately regretted it. The first paragraph was an apology. Sort of. The second paragraph was about forgiveness. Naturally. The third paragraph asked about my children. And there it was. The thing that made my blood pressure spike instantly. My children. Not her grandchildren. My children. People she had never met. Children she had made no effort to know until now. Children she suddenly seemed interested in. I stared at the screen, then typed exactly one response. You do not have grandchildren. A few moments later, I continued. You stopped being my mother years ago. Since I am not your daughter, my children cannot possibly be your grandchildren. Then I blocked the account. Problem solved? Or so I thought. 3 days later, another account appeared. Then another, different names, different profiles, same person, same message, same guilt, same manipulation. Eventually, I stopped reading them. Delete, block, move on. Delete, block, move on. For nearly a year, that became the routine. Then something changed. The messages became more frequent, more desperate, more emotional. Instead of one account every few months, I was getting several each week. Then multiple per day. Soon my father joined in. Then distant relatives. Then people I hadn't spoken to in over a decade. The sheer volume became impossible to ignore. Something was happening. I just didn't know what. Yet. One evening, Lucas found me staring at my phone. You okay? I handed it to him. He scrolled through dozens of messages. His expression shifted from confusion to annoyance. This is getting weird. That's what I thought? What do they want? I don't know. That wasn't entirely true. I had theories. Money, attention, control. Those were usually the answers. But something felt different this time. More urgent, more desperate, like they were racing against something. Then Vanessa reached out. That got my attention, because Vanessa never apologized, never admitted fault, never accepted responsibility. Those concepts were foreign to her. Yet suddenly she was messaging me, repeatedly. The first message was short. Please talk to me. The second was longer. I know you hate me, I understand, but please give me one chance. The third was emotional. I miss my sister. I laughed out loud. Actually laughed. After everything she'd done, now she missed her sister? Interesting timing. For 3 weeks, the messages continued. Every day, sometimes multiple times per day. My mother, my father, Vanessa. Occasionally cousins, aunts, family friends. The pressure became relentless. One night, Lucas sat beside me while I deleted another batch. What if you ask what they want? I looked at him. You think they'll tell me? No. Exactly. He smiled. Fair. But the question stayed with me. What did they want? Because they definitely wanted something. People don't suddenly discover remorse after 10 years. Not without motivation. A few days later, I finally responded. Not because I cared. Because I was curious. I sent a single message. One conversation. That's all. The response arrived almost instantly, as if they'd been waiting beside the phone. Within an hour, a Zoom meeting was scheduled. Just me. No kids. No Lucas. No audience. Just us. Honestly, I preferred it that way. The following Sunday, I logged in. Immediately regretted it. All 3 of them were already there. My mother, my father, Vanessa. 10 years. 10 years had passed. yet somehow they looked exactly as I remembered, and completely different. Mom looked older, much older. The years hadn't been kind. Dad looked tired, defeated, smaller somehow. Then there was Vanessa. The sight of her genuinely surprised me. She looked terrible. Not terrible because she'd aged. Terrible because she looked sick. Her skin appeared pale, her face thinner. Dark circles sat beneath her eyes. For a brief moment, I almost felt concerned. Almost. Then I remembered who she was. Concern vanished. The meeting started predictably. Awkward greetings, forced smiles, requests to see my children. I shut that down immediately. No, Mom looked disappointed. Dad looked frustrated. Vanessa looked wounded. I didn't care. They weren't seeing my kids. Not now. Not ever. The conversation moved on. Then the apologies began, one after another, like rehearsed speeches. Mom apologized. Dad apologized. Vanessa apologized. Everyone apologized. Yet something felt off. Very off. Because none of it sounded genuine. The words were correct. The emotions weren't. It felt like actors reading from a script they'd barely memorized. Eventually, Vanessa spoke. Tears appeared. Conveniently. I miss my sister. I almost rolled my eyes. Almost. Then Mom launched into a speech about family. Naturally, families stick together. Families forgive. Families support each other. Families heal. I let her talk and talk and talk. Eventually she finished. The silence lingered. 3 faces stared at me expectantly, waiting, hoping, praying. Finally I spoke. Is that all? The reaction was immediate. Mom blinked. What? Is that why we're here? Nobody answered. Interesting. I stood up from my chair. Okay then, have a nice life. Panic exploded across all 3 faces. Wait, Claire, please. The performance was finally cracking. The real reason was about to emerge. I could feel it. Mom started crying. Actual crying this time. Not the practiced version. The desperate version. And then she said something that made my stomach drop. Vanessa is very sick. Silence filled the room. I slowly sat back down. Vanessa lowered her head. Dad looked away. Nobody spoke. Not immediately. Finally I asked, how sick? No one answered right away. The hesitation told me everything. Whatever this was, it was serious. Very serious. And for the first time since joining the call, I understood. This wasn't about forgiveness. This wasn't about family. This wasn't about reconciliation. They wanted something. Something big. Something they couldn't get from anyone else. And in the next few minutes, I was going to find out exactly what it was. To be continued.